Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Open Crime Market Commentary for the week of October 1st. My name is Toby Gennaro from Trade with Precision, and just coming to you this week with the outlook for the U.S. indices and possibly some commodities and foreign currencies to keep an eye on over the next couple days. So getting into the U.S. indices and looking at the big cap stocks here on the ES Futures, which is the S&P 500, and just looking at some of the higher time frames, give us a little longer term perspective on what might be going on this week. As far as U.S. index markets, as you can see on the monthly chart, we've got 5 straight months of bullish candles. Obviously, we just started this candle right here for the month of October, but we closed out the September, let's see, on Friday, and that gave us a high of 1468, and we've got a low of 1394. So it doesn't look like a great candle, but we're still getting higher highs, higher lows. And we don't have any kind of divergence setting up anywhere. So, looking at the weekly chart, we can see that we just got this pullback, basically back down into that 1420 level, right around like 1424, I think was the low last week. So we had a nice pullback, and you can really see that pretty well on the daily chart. Pullback right back into the moving averages, and started getting some higher highs, higher lows. Just finally broke through that level right there, which is around 1445. And just got above that today with some of the ISM manufacturing news was very positive on the economy. So it made a jump there, and we're looking, if we look down on the 480 chart, we can see that that pullback right back into that level. There was a level there right around 1433, and then again we had that level right around that 1425. And then there was another backstop there right around 1412. So overall, nice pullback. We should be back up to the highs here, which would be the idea. That's typically what the what the markets will do. So that's what we're anticipating. Still bullish on these indices. Still bullish on the markets. So we're just looking for a pullback. If you go down to some of the lower time frames, you'll see we've got some overextension on a lot of those, and we're just into a little bit of a resistance level right there around 1448. So it might be getting a little bit of a pullback, or we might get a consolidation and then break through some of this congestion here to get back up to that high of 1468. And typically when you look at the the larger time frames here, like the monthly, we're looking to be getting back up into that 1528 level. Not all this week, but that's really kind of the direction here over the next several weeks. So that's the outlook for the U.S. index markets on the S&P 500. And then taking a look at the small cap stocks here on the Russell 2000, again looking at the monthly chart. Really the same story here in looking at the S&P, except we have a little bit of a flat level coming in here. We just made the third touch with 2 prior touches here at that 857 level, or at least pretty close. And then we just barely broke through and got kind of a rejection candle there at the close of last month for September. And so starting up a new candle here in October. We may be getting, I would anticipate maybe a consolidation along this flat level right around that 1850. And if we can get some series of small candles on some of these lower time frames pushing up against that 857 level, then we could possibly see a flat level break on a higher time frame, like a monthly chart. But we can manage that on some of the lower time frames by looking at just the price action in terms of what it's doing around that 857 level. So as we start to look at the weekly chart, we can see the last 2 touches here, which would essentially be this candle and that candle. So we're right there. We got a little bit of a breakthrough here, pulling right back down. It doesn't look like we're going to get back down into the moving averages necessarily on the weekly chart, since we just did that on the daily. And it looks like we're getting a breakup through some of those candles right there and looking to push higher. There's a little bit of resistance right in there around that 848 level, but overall things are looking pretty good on the the 480. It looks like we're right up against that pushing up right against that 845, 846 level, and we've got up there this morning. Let's see what the high was. 845 was the high. So I would anticipate a breakdown off of that. We could get possibly a breakdown into that 1820 level, but in a bounce. But by looking at some of the other indices like the Dow and the S&P 500, it looks like we're going to be breaking through that level and just shooting back up to the most recent high. So we could get up as high as 865. But keep in mind if we can break through this level, potentially get a pullback, and then we'd probably get a nice bounce off of that and move higher. But for right now, really kind of looking, we don't have a breakthrough necessarily, so we're looking really for a consolidation there, right around that 857 level, and see if we can get a flat level break on a higher time frame, which should usually signify a fairly significant run. So not necessarily going to happen this week, but just something to keep an eye on in terms of the trade strategies that we're teaching in the advanced course. We have the momentum breakout strategy, which is a flat level of at least 2 or more touches, which means we have a third touch. Higher time frame, which is very bullish for us here in this case. And then we have the trend flow trade setup, which is right here. We're pull back right back into the moving averages among the 10 and the 20, and then looking for those setup candles, a break of the high, and then we're back off to the races, back up to potentially the most recent high there on the Russell 2000. So that's the outlook for the small caps for the week. Keep an eye out for some of those levels and some of those trade setups. And just going through one other U.S. market index that we don't cover too much since we cover the large caps and the small caps, but nice little setup here on the Nasdaq. As you can see, very similar scenario here as with the ES futures. Got a series of months here, higher highs, higher lows. A little bit of a rejection candle off of that level right there around 2,800. So that's a little bit concerning. But as we move down, we've got some divergence here on the weekly chart, setting up with that most recent high there around 2868. But we're getting a pullback right back into the 10-period moving average as we look at the daily chart. A little deeper pullback, almost into that 2743 level, which is a solid level of support, but pulled up a little bit short of that right around 2760. And so right back in and amongst the moving averages, and it looks like we have a little flat level as we move down on the charts. The 480, we've got 1, 2, 3 touches. If you go down to the 240 and the 120 charts, you'll start to see a little bit of a flat level setting up right there. And with a lot of the positive bullish momentum here on the higher time frames, I'd really anticipate a break of that level right around 2823. And then you just measure out the consolidation level here from 2776 to 823, roughly about almost 50 points, which would basically almost take us almost right back up into that previous high. So take a look at some of the lower time frames, check to see if there's any divergence on the 240, the 120, the 60, and then you'll see that flat level break set up. So either look for some consolidation candles pushing up against that 2820 level, and then look for the break of that level, and then you can possibly get in on a trade moving higher. But again, on all the U.S. indices, very bullish. Higher level time frames looking very strong, momentum very strong as well. As you can see, optimal chart structures. All of the moving averages in alignment, the 200, the 50, the 20, the 10 on the monthly, the weekly, the daily, the 480. I mean, everything is in alignment, everything moving higher. So things are looking very good. We're just looking for those pullbacks, looking again for those trend flow setups, which we're going to see a lot more of those than we do the flat level breaks. But keep an eye out for these flat levels because they're usually good ones, and a lot of times the run is fairly predictable because we're just looking for it to mirror the actual consolidation right here. So that's the outlook for the Nasdaq. Good little setup right there. Keep an eye on that one for the week, and we'll see how that works out. And lastly, we'll be taking a look at some of the mini contracts on silver, and just looking at again some of the higher time frames. You can see we've been in a series here of lower highs and lower lows on a fairly high time frame here, the monthly chart. So just got to move up, back up into the moving averages, and as we look down on the weekly chart, we haven't broken up to a new high yet, so we still had a lower low in place, and this is still representative right here of a lower high, although we've had a little bit of just slightly a lower low and then a higher high. So we're really in, as you can see, just a range here and a consolidation. So what I'm looking at right here, since we're at the top of the range, I'm looking for a setup here to potentially look for a shorting opportunity. And as we move down, we can start to see that we've got a little bit of a flat level setting up here. Not that precise, so it's not a very good one. And then we have a fairly large rejection candle there, not only on the daily chart, but also on the 480 chart. You can see that flat level setting up a little bit better. Not as precise as we would like it to be, but what I'm looking at here, we don't teach this trade, but this is really kind of a fade or reversal type trade. Anytime you have divergence like this, where we have We just put in a higher high on the price action, but we put in a lower high on both the MACD and the RSI. So there's a pretty strong divergence there on the 480 chart with a fairly large rejection candle. So if we can get a break of the low of this candle, which is 34.3, if we can get a break to the downside of that, more than likely we can take this at least down into that level of 33.3 and potentially maybe even a little bit more than that. Sometimes on some of these, when you get breaks on some of these higher time frames, you might be looking at a 50% pullback of this most recent run right here. So keep an eye out for that trade setup. Look for the break of the low of that candle on the 480 chart, and even go down and take a look at the 240 and the 120 and see what that looks like. And at least you'll have a way to take a look at some of the ranges on playing that range from the high to the low. But wouldn't be caught going long this market on silver just yet, even though we're in a solid uptrend overall for the last several years. We want to make sure that we get in at the right opportunity to take the market long, which right now on silver doesn't necessarily look that way. Things are looking fairly bearish just for the near term. So keep an eye out for that for potentially a quick trade if we can get the break of that candle, and then look, we're looking to cover here somewhere around this level of 33.4, or potentially somewhere around this level of 32.8. And so it looks like a decent little setup there on silver. Take a look at that one and see what you think. So there's the outlook for the week on the U.S. indices along with silver. I'd like to thank you all for watching the Open eCry market commentary for the week of October 1st, and we do look forward to speaking to you next week on the Market Update.